Our last speaker of the morning, or now afternoon, Hadley Arnold. Hadley studied art history and received her bachelor's degree at Bachelor of Arts at Harvard, and then followed with a Master of Architecture from SCI-Arc. She served as associate editor at the Getty Center for the History of Art and Humanities, and has taught urban history, theory, and design studios at SCI-Arc, UCLA, Woodbury University, and most recently USC. Hadley formerly served as executive director of the Arid Lands Institute, which she co-founded with Peter Arnold. The Arnolds have focused their teaching, research, and practice on dry lands design since 1998. Currently, she's serving as the co-founder and CEO of Divining Lab, Water Risk and Resilience Analytics. Divining Lab's work is grounded in a belief that the careful, explicit design of water systems is fundamental to the crafting of meaningful and durable places. Throughout her professional career, Hadley has been as committed to raising questions as providing answers. For our purposes today, one such question might be, what are the full potentials of placemaking in high-density and even water-stressed environments? So to address this question and many others, please welcome Hadley Arnold.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, West Hollywood, for bringing us together. What an extraordinary laboratory of ideas and inspiration. That was really remarkable, seeing your work just now. I am here from Divining Lab, and I am here to talk about how to accelerate paths to implementation for a water smart city that is really focused on its future and climate adaptation. I think you're all well aware, and we've all touched on many of these threads today, that in a changing climate, a warmer atmosphere carries more moisture, and it has twin effects. Catastrophic urban flooding, which is a $1 trillion global problem and growing, and of course, longer, hotter, dry periods. You are familiar with both, particularly drought here in Southern California, just having had the head-spinning experience of coming out of a 20-year drought period, only to be followed by deluge this past winter, for example. There is a particular kind of flooding that we have focused our work on in the most recent chapter of our research and applied work. There are 4 kinds of flooding, and I'm going to address one very specifically. Sea level rise, coastal storm surge, and riverine or overtopping of river-based flooding are well-known, well-modeled, well-understood, and of less relevance, of course, to West Hollywood than rain. Rain-based flooding is very specific. It's sometimes called overland flooding. Of course, it's called stormwater flash flooding, urban flooding, or pluvial flooding. It is the most expensive climate peril. It is expensive to get urban flooding wrong. And it's a misconception that when a place like Houston floods in Hurricane Harvey in 2017, that is somehow associated with coastal or wind-driven storm surge flooding. That was rain. And Houston was a huge wake-up call to many cities, many engineering firms, many public agencies that we don't know urban rain well, and that it's very, very costly to get it wrong. It's very hard to model. It's hard to model because of the complexity of impermeable city surfaces, that those surfaces are changing all the time with development, that impermeability and topography and the sheeting of water are just sort of famously hard calculations, time-consuming, shallow water equations. Consequently, most agencies and most risk models actually just substitute riverine modeling for pluvial, and Houston's a good example of where that error adds up to a very costly differential. What if we could get urban rain right? is a question that is of great interest to me, and I think is of great interest to West Hollywood. If you got urban rain right, what would be the net benefits for, of course, life safety, property damage, but also related co-benefits, environmental equity, investing in underserved neighborhoods and leveraging assets, critical infrastructures. How do you protect whether it's your cell phone towers, whether it's your neighborhood grocery store, or whether it's Cedars-Sinai? How do you be sure you're up and running in the way that you need to be during a flood event? Obviously, supply chain, pollutant loads, urban heat island, habitat, the long-term benefits of wanting to get a more absorptive city, open space. And we've only touched on it very briefly today, and it's super, super important for any conversation about water in California. Water in California is energy intensive. It is carbon intensive. If you're managing water well and looking at local supplies, offsetting some of your imports, you're looking at energy savings, and you're looking at greenhouse gas reductions. And then I think with the folks in the room with the shared design and planning backgrounds, there's the question of what do we end up with as urban form, as great, inspiring, challenging, and nourishing built artifacts that come out of, we know what our rain risk is, and we designed into it. And of course, there are the economic benefits of upping your resilience ratings, your credit worthiness, and the one that sort of brought us here today, how is it related to increasing water supply? For us, the question was, where do you even start? When your built environment is fully built out and looks like this is an overview of the San Fernando Valley, how do you prioritize action? How do you identify what should I do and where should I do it, let alone how am I going to pay for it? So we built a set of tools that are designed to accelerate decision-making processes for companies, for communities, for cities, anyone interested in getting to resilience faster. The way we did that, I'll share with you in a moment, and then we'll look at it as applied to West Hollywood. But of course, the key question is acceleration. How do we prioritize investment from limited budgets into distributed green infrastructures that will do the maximum amount of work and deliver the maximum amount of value for those dollars invested? So we built a tool, we call it Hazel. It's named for actually the traditional wood that sort of mysteriously yielded new water results in new water sources in the sort of lore or history of water finding. And that's what we're all doing. We're all trying to find new sources of water. You've succeeded in conservation at a really high level in West Hollywood. I know you'll keep pushing yourselves to do it, but it is quite remarkable. That's called low-hanging fruit. It's the cheapest place to find more water is to use less of it and make more available for yourself and for your neighbors. Recycling is going to happen only more and more in Los Angeles. Conservation, recycling, and stormwater capture together can meet 82% of Los Angeles's needs. Half of that is going to have to come from stormwater. Where do we do it? How do we do it? Impermeability in a fully built out environment such as ours is no small challenge. Finding out where does your water accumulate when it falls, and it will accumulate in some places and not others. Again, partly about permeability, partly about topography, land uses. So let's call that the surface model. How does water behave when dumped on an impermeable basin? Really, really importantly, if you want to grow your groundwater reserves, if you want to augment your local waters, you need to know where is it suitable to infiltrate water. And the answer is it's very difficult and it's uneven. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach to infiltration or suitability. It depends on the geology beneath that impermeable crust, liquefaction, toxic waste sites, anything from a leaking gas station to a Superfund site. You want to rule out where infiltration is not advisable, just as much as you want to rule in where would it be strategic. So creating a tool that helps us arrive at some of these decisions faster required us to couple a surface model and a subsurface model. And it allowed us to code zones or areas in the following way. A hazel zone or a hydrologic zone 1 is, of course, priority infiltration. Green is good to go. You have some conditions on the surface and you have some conditions on the subsurface that suggest you could get stormwater quickly and affordably into the ground using a sort of a particular kit of parts. Hazel zone or hydrologic zone 2 is different. It's sort of a mixed bag. It's a little riskier in terms of being close to inappropriate zones. You might want to do some infiltration, but you may also want to be capturing and storing on site. We call it a kind of mixed bag. Hazel zone 3, you want to avoid infiltration. If there are known contaminants, if there is liquefaction risk, if there's inappropriate geology, don't waste your time and don't contaminate your water by striving for infiltration. Take that off the table. It's also, so we call that capture and use on site, or capture and convey to a more appropriate zone. It's the most expensive zone to work in because you're not using the land to do some of your gravity-fed work. You're actually inserting more constructed solutions. Hazel zone 1, we might do infiltration basins, dry ponds, porous pavements. It's sort of almost self-explanatory as the most permeable or sponge-like sites in the city. We can, of course, start to evaluate what's this worth, how much water can I get, and am I beginning as a community to achieve the goals we set out for ourselves. Hazel zone 2 is where there's some risk management and risk assessment would have to be involved in terms of how aggressive do we want to be on this. On-site capture and reuse on some properties, infiltration in others. So cisterns, rain barrels, but also smart streets, infiltration basins, porous pavements. The model is, and probably its great strength, is that it works across it's very high resolution. It's resolved down to half a square meter, or approximately the size of a barbecue, but it holds up, and it holds up at 250 square miles or 800 square miles. The complexity of an urban watershed, but down to parcel and sub-parcel resolution. So looking for where exactly are my opportunities, is what the model is designed to yield and kind of get us to faster. So again, on a specific site or on a campus such as this one, we might look at impermeability. We might peel back that permeability, start to add water and see what am I getting for what I might invest in that particular parcel or block. What would happen in West Hollywood if we looked more closely at surface and subsurface suitability with that kind of level of resolution? And in fact, what just happened in West Hollywood with the rains of this past past winter. As you know, we had extraordinary rains. Between January and last week, almost 23 inches fell on West Hollywood, more than twice what we would ordinarily get in a year, and we haven't been having ordinary rain years, so that was a lot of water. 22 inches, for those of you who aren't familiar with the concept of an acre foot, 22 inches is obviously almost 2 feet. An acre foot is 1 acre filled to 1 foot deep. an acre-foot on West Hollywood usage, typical residential usage, again, huge benefits accruing to your high-density multifamily community. You can support 12 residents of West Hollywood for a year on 1 acre-foot. You're a 1,200 acre city. You had almost 2 feet falling on you. You had almost 2,400 acre feet gross fall on the surface of the city this winter. And of course, you're 80% impermeable, impervious, not porous. You're sheeting water off. So what happens with those 2,300 acre feet of water? 1,700 of it is lost as stormwater, runs off. Small amount is evapotranspired. Some is infiltrated at a shallow level subsurface, and a very small amount is infiltrates deeply. What does that look like going forward? How can we start to convert this into where are my challenges, but also where are my opportunities? The model tells us that in a 100-year event, which is approximately 8.5 inches of water falling in a 24-hour period for this purpose. You dump that on a digital model of West Hollywood, and we see you've got 12 inches of water on San Vicente Boulevard as we're approaching Cedars-Sinai. You've got 6 inches of water, more the sort of royal blue color coding on lots of your streets. You've got a sort of smattering of the hot spots in hot pink, but clearly San Vicente Boulevard is showing up as among your most vulnerable spots. And if we were to dive in and we would look at parcel by parcel, you'll see this varies considerably. And I'm curious if it might be a loading dock behind the Pacific Design Center that we're seeing as the sort of heart-shaped bright red behind there, and what exactly, if we looked at this and compared it to actuals, what exactly is going on back there. Flood, obviously, is storm drain systems. City storm drain systems are designed to handle flood, get that water off those streets. What we're finding is, with the greater variability in inundation, our stormwater systems are sized to essentially fail at a certain threshold, and then after that, water stands on site. This model that I'm sharing with you today does not have the time on site built into it. Different version does, but it's an interesting element, which is time. How long would it be until roads leading to Cedars-Sinai or other pieces of critical infrastructure would be clear? Again, knowing those risk profiles is important. So this is just sort of backing out again and looking at how might you code flood depth and flood risk on the face of the city, essentially, as we just talked about, the southwest corner of the city at greater vulnerability than others. We could dive in at a parcel level or an address level. We're not going to do that here. Really, the question is, how could that possibly be seen as an opportunity? When you're looking at the stormwater capture master plan from City of Los Angeles, you're not really being given precise enough information in our view to be actionable or meaningful. We understand there are 2 large areas, priority zone, not priority zone for infiltration, but of course you're blanked out based on the political boundaries of West Hollywood and Beverly Hills being their own cities. If we looked beneath the surface at infiltration and suitability, in this modeling, I would consider it essentially the kind of equivalent of back back of envelope, so just bear with us. But again, you see the emergence of green is good to go, yellow or amber kind of caution, proceed with caution, and red being not suitable. And within that, we see some variations. So basically what we start to understand is that there is a pretty ample Hazel Zone 1, and if you were going to invest in cheap and fast, it is within Hazel Zone 1 or Hydrologic Zone 1 that you'd want to be working first. Using and these best practices are from the EPA catalog of best practices. They're not arbitrary. Hazel Zone 2, proceed with caution. Again, that mix of land-based strategies, but also capture and use on site, which is what one has to do exclusively in the hardest sites to manage, which are the darker orange within Hazel Zone 2, and of course within the red. And then thinking about Laney's and Merriam's earlier presentations, of course that's where the incredible power of architecture could come in. If you were working into these zones and you had these requirements to store on-site, reuse on-site, or possibly convey to more suitable sites, you would want to be working at the kind of scale of interventions that their talks were implying. Briefly, I just want to touch on what would be the value and how might you pay for it. So just going to assert, again, sort of back of envelope, that if you had 1,700 acre feet of stormwater sheeting off the city excuse me, in this one winter, you could arguably tie it to a value, the same, approximately $1,000 per acre foot, which is what City of West Hollywood is currently paying DWP and MWD on average. So that 1,700 acre feet has a $1.7 million value in theory. The assertion is more or less it's sort of money on the table, or it's a credit that could start to be leveraged if it were looked at that way. It also has other co-benefits. We won't go into all of them, but energy saved and greenhouse gas reductions, really important to get that water energy nexus kind of talking to each other as early in a process as possible. 5 million kilowatt hours saved. Where did we get that number? Because storing stormwater in the ground, withdrawing it and treating it to reuse comes in at about a little bit less than a third of the energy required to bring you your water from Colorado or Northern California. The corollary then also being carbon, 4,000 tons CO2 equivalent from the water that fell on you between January and April. How might you get there? And then we'll close up. I am not a policy expert and I am not a municipal finance expert, but working with wonderful collaborators over the years, you take in by osmosis some of the approaches that seem to be having the traction. P3s is an obvious and very large category, but specifically having to do with water. The Nature Conservancy contends we can do it. Private sector can do this more affordably, more fast, more quickly, and more effectively than the public sector often can. And they cite P3s in Detroit and Philadelphia in particular as examples of successful stormwater capture public-private partnerships. I think a really interesting mechanism is the idea of a special assessment district. Again, there are others in the room with more familiarity with these than I. You may know of downsides that I do not, but I'm interested in how is it when you've made a green infrastructure investment and created value for, let's say, residences, multifamily residences around it. Maybe you've done an habitat, open space, infiltration basin or courtyard, a permeable parking lot. You've created value for those existing buildings. They shouldn't then be punished for it by that value being the way that they become displaced in a gentrification process that sees that increased value and grows up around it. Rather, if I understand special assessment districts correctly, those existing properties do not have fees levied, and those that come in after them have a tiered pricing, essentially for the privilege of paying for the benefit that you've already provided. And lastly, I want to say stormwater credit trading. I think there are downsides and upsides to any form of credit trading. It's a way sometimes of offloading responsibility by writing a check we were talking about earlier. But if done right, it could be done, I think, quite well. Imagine that you're a developer in Hazel Zone 3. You've got some things to handle in terms of dewatering. You have paid a premium for possibly a piece of land to develop, and you know there are better infiltration sites in Hazel Zone 1, and City of West Hollywood guides you to underserved communities that are going to benefit from that investment and help meet the city's water goals, greenhouse gas emission goals, all of it. A developer in Hazel Zone 3 pays to have the stormwater work done in the more appropriate and more affordable Hazel Zone 1. So I think stormwater credit trading, if done carefully, could be an effective way to start to move pieces around on the sort of chessboard of your city. I think that you have an incredible opportunity in West Hollywood as a high-density, forward-looking and small community to model practices, new architectures, zoning envelopes that could serve as models in other places and export those models so we all get to a resilient future faster. So that was a lot, but I was happy to share it, and thank you for having us.